Hi, Mattea. It's Professor Sasso. Hope you're doing well. So I have some feedback on your stories, and feel free to shoot me an email or give me a quick call if you don't understand any of my feedback. I really loved your first story, and I think it's probably the stronger of the two. And what worked really well in your first story that wasn't quite, I love the concept of your second story, but wasn't quite happening in your second story was that you really set up really nice scenes in the first one. And in the second one, you had a little bit more, your main character was very much up in her head. So I think the story works better when you put your characters into action. And that wasn't happening as much in the second story as the first. But I want you to pick the one that you most gravitate toward and that you think you have the most energy for. But I think your first one probably has more potential, and seeing that we only have through Sunday to revise them, I think it might be the most workable place. So some suggestions I have on your first story, which I think you picked a really good moment. You have characters that obviously care about each other, and you've put them into a tense situation. So all those things are working really well. My suggestion is we really like in stories to not have things over-explained to us or explained before we get into the action of the story. So my first suggestion was to take that first setup paragraph out and just drop us right into the beginning of the day between the mom and daughter, where I might even start at the crisis point where they're actually in the kitchen and her mother starts coughing, and you can tell us that they went shopping together later and give us that background information later. But we really want to be grabbed in that first paragraph. So having the mom maybe coughing up the blood at that point is a great place for us to start, and we're like, wow, what's the story going to be about? And then you can backtrack maybe into that second maybe reverse the first and second paragraph. So the one that says, it was a Wednesday, August 14th, maybe before you do that, have the mom coughing and then back up to that moment, if that makes sense. And then this takes place, you have it in the past tense, and I've been suggesting to a lot of people in their stories to set it in the present tense. It makes us feel like we're literally in the action with you, and so that all the action feels really immediate when it's in present tense. So if you made all two of the scenes, the one in the hospital room, the one where the father is getting to the hospital room, and that first scene, I would just try it in present tense. You're going to see it makes this really come alive. So that first scene takes place in the kitchen, so I would have maybe a little bit more description of the kitchen. We really want to feel where you are, because we don't just pretend like it's almost like we're trying to watch a movie, but then they have blank screen right behind the characters. That's how we feel in a story when we don't have the setting. So maybe just add a few elements of the kitchen where the mom starts coughing, some of the sights, sounds, smells. Give us a sense of what this kitchen looks like that's different than any other kitchen that we've seen. You also have the mom, you have a great description of the dad on your second page, but I never really get a sense of what the mom looks like. And as she's, in this traumatic moment where she's coughing up blood and maybe leaning over the kitchen sink, we can get a sense of what her body looks like, or how her hair is, or something where we get an idea of what this mom looks like. So maybe shifting that first kitchen scene, add some more physical elements to that scene, give us a sense of what the mom looks like, and maybe try that whole scene in present tense. We then move on to the scene with the dad, and my suggestion there is that, he gets on the phone with his daughter, he finds out his wife is coughing up blood. Maybe, I feel like his reaction would be a little bit more, and even if he's a calm guy, it might be a little bit more urgent, right? I think he would maybe panic a little more, or his heart would race or something. I feel like he handles that phone call very calmly, and I might add a little emotion there. I think you've got some really nice things about when they first, let's see, what did I like? The guy sitting, when they're first sitting in the emergency room, the daughter and the mom, you describe some of the people around them. That's really important. I think that's good. And I would do a little more of that. They're in an emergency room. The mom's coughing up blood. I feel like this is a really urgent situation, even if it's not life-threatening. You have a description about a lovely nurse comes over. I feel like the daughter would be, again, a little bit more on edge and probably not using words like lovely, you know. She would probably be noticing, paying really close attention to her mom right then. And then you have a moment where she texts the boyfriend, and then the boyfriend reacts to the text. I might have that scene where the boy's sitting there thinking about his, you know, future mother-in-law. Again, create a physical space that he's sitting in so we get some better sense of the boyfriend. Just give us a few physical details about the space that he's sitting in. And again, I would make this whole scene present tense too, so we feel like we're right in the middle of it with these characters. And then we have the boyfriend entering the emergency room, which I think is a great moment. Like, you're trying to play up the interpersonal relationship between characters. We really care about things like that. So I might show the boyfriend entering and have a moment where they embrace, or, you know, the girl breathes a sigh of relief in his arms, or something where we get a sense that she's now relieved that he's there, and now the four of them are going to face this together. And then you've got this great last moment, right, where they're waiting to hear, and the mom really wants a cigarette, even though she's coughing up blood. I think play that scene out a teeny bit more. I would actually have, you know, dialogue there where the mom's asking for the cigarette and the nurses are saying no and the family's worried. It's going to give us a better sense of the mom, because I think she's a character that's missing from here. We don't really get a good sense of her. And then we're kind of left at the end of the story, right? We talked a little bit about how stories have to there's reaching a point of tension, which was happening in that first scene. We get to the highest point of tension when she's in the emergency room coughing up blood, but we haven't hit a climax. Like, was there a moment where it reaches its highest point, where the doctors say, no, we need to admit you right now, right? Something, the tension has to hit a climactic point, and we don't quite get there, because then after that happens, then we're in the falling action of the story, which is the resolution. And I don't think we hit a high point of tension or quite a resolution point. We know that she's going to be admitted to the hospital, and then you say at the end that this was the best thing that could have happened, but we don't quite get a sense of what's wrong with her. And then the resolution part, like where the family's maybe sitting together and saying, you know, thank goodness she's in the hospital, and we can now deal with this together, but we know what's wrong with her now. So maybe finding out what's wrong with her is that high point of tension, and then the resolution is, okay, but we can handle this together as a family. I hope that's helpful. And then your second story, again, I think is really nice. You've got a lot of great physical details in this story. Again, I would probably, I think you do a little talking in the intro to this that I said not to do in the first story, but I think it works here. You get the voice of this character right away, which is nice. I said consider writing this in present tense too, that you are right now, your main character is thinking about joining the military at the beginning of the story. I think you've got some really nice details about how she dresses, her uniform, a couple of really nice moments on the second page about what it's like to be you know, a drill sergeant lady who wants to eat her for breakfast. That's really great. And then you do a lot in the story, again, where the character's up in her head a lot. You say, you know, you're almost giving away the end of the story when you say, no, I did not end up being that hero. My life changed all of a sudden. Just let the story do those things for you. Just keep moving us ahead. I think maybe taking out that paragraph where you say, no, I didn't end up being that hero, and then just leading us right into my mother is sick, you know. So we have this young woman who has these dreams. We understand that, and now we're getting that she's sick. On the bottom of that second page. And then we, again, have a lot of moments where the character's up in her head, and I almost want on that third page where you talk about, you know, what what do you think my mom would most want if I asked her? I'd rather have an interaction between the daughter and the mother that we can get a sense of who each of them are, rather than the character just trying to guess at what her mom thinks. So I might on that third page put a scene where we're seeing the two of them interact, and then we can make some assumptions based on that interaction that, yeah, this daughter is probably not going to leave her mother, and the mother is probably in some ways torn up about what to do. And that can happen through a scene or action rather than your lead character just sort of telling us everything. And then we get to the fact that she's graduating from boot camp at the top of her class. These are moments where we would really like to see them happen. We're most connected to the action of to scene work, to the character actually doing something and being part of something, not the character telling us that it happened. So I might decide where to put a few scenes in here. I think the mother-daughter scene might be important. Potentially the daughter being, graduating from boot camp is interesting. And then we jump all the way ahead where she's now in the military field and we don't quite know what happened and there wasn't a lot of scene work. We don't know these characters that well. We know the main character and she has a lovely voice, but it's like we don't ever see her interacting with this family. We don't get a sense of her relationship with her mother because we never see them together in the story. So what you did so well in the first story was that you created scenes where these characters were interacting. And although the concept of the second story is really nice, we don't have a lot of those pockets where we get to know the characters. So I might, if you want to concentrate on the second story, create a couple of scenes where those characters are interacting. The second story definitely has the rising, falling that the first story didn't have, which was really nice. But you can decide. That's some of my suggestions. But you have a really great storytelling voice. Your mechanics look great. You set the stories up well. I think the most important things to us as readers, we want to physically feel the spaces you're in. We want to know the characters well, and we want to see them interacting so we get a sense of them. So I hope that's helpful. But give me a call if it's not, and we'll talk further. Okay, thanks, Mattea.